Welcome to Real Vision Crypto and the Defiant's weekly crypto show, deftly straddling the rapidly shrinking schism twixt trad and rad in the sphere of fiscal fantasticality. Today, we're labeling a deep goblet of festive cheer with an early Christmas present that can only be described as Raoul Pal. And fighting not to be upstaged as the show's overly loquacious limey, I am, of course, Robin Schmidt, chief videogrammer at the Defiant. And rounding out this most blessed nativity scene is the author, chiefess, and movie producer absolutely nobody is calling the Archangel of APY, but maybe they should. It's Camila Russo. How was that,
Thank you,
everybody?
That was the best intro I've ever heard. Well done.
Amazing.
Yes, I spend many, many hours writing these. But it's fantastic to have you back on, Raoul. Did you know that Camila Russo is now author of a top 20 Bloomberg best business books of the year? Did you know this?
I did know this because she just told me off camera, but it's no bloody surprise. So it's just it's just fantastic news. Then the news on the film and what can be done. And it's just the whole thing is really interesting. So it's just, she should be super proud.
It's funny because we will be talking about culture fairly significantly later on, but Camila, you've actually created culture. You've chronicled a moment in time, a piece of history, and now it's being turned into culture. So you are legitimately embedded now. That's weird.
Wow, I had never kind of thought of it that way. It makes things bigger than what I think they are, but yeah, I don't know. Right now I just want this movie to be made. I'm pushing this NFT community around the Infinite Machine, so hopefully this community of people can, take it and run with it, and they can make it culture. But yeah, I'm happy to get kind of the Ethereum story out there. So super excited about that.
Raoul, have you been tempted to write a book recently, ever?
I've been asked many times. It sounds like, oh yes, I've been asked to write a book. Makes me sound really impressive. But no, I haven't got time, and my attention to detail is not good enough to write a book. I'm too ADD to manage to put it together. Videos are much easier for me. It's like we had a script today. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Not because I didn't want to, because I was being a rebel. It's just I'm useless at sticking to anything like that. It's a hard discipline, writing a book, really hard.
It is. I mean, yeah, it does take time, but you can team up with someone, who can stick to it. So maybe there's a collab.
And I
here.
also write, because I write Global Macro Investor, I write 130 pages every month, and I write it in a weekend. So it's usually, I write a full dissertation of 10,000 words every month. I write it without any notes. I just sit down and write the thing. Yeah, I've got Remy as my analyst to help me put together stuff. But so I do write a lot, and I really love it. It's a flow zone when you're writing. It's a really great thing. Everything else tunes out. But yeah, I just don't think I've got the commitment to it for months on end.
Yeah, I have a similar thing. I write about 7,000 words a week, which nobody ever reads. And I'm the one that speaks them, but everything is written. And it's like,
really?
I do so much writing. Yeah, no, I script everything.
Wow. I tell you who was great at scripting stuff was Anthony Bourdain. He scripted every single thing that he did. I don't script anything. I do everything just off the top of my head, but that's why you're a professional and I'm not.
Well, I do a lot of stuff
You
off the
both
top of
are
my
great.
head. And then that's why maybe we shouldn't. But this idea of talent agencies, books, it brings us, full circle to a topic we wanted to talk about, which was copyright and licensing, particularly in relation to CryptoPunks, Bored Apes, and Artifact. There's just a bunch of kind of questions being asked around these assets now about, I guess it's because there's money involved. But Camila, you had some things you wanted to talk about in terms of this licensing agreement and how it's propelling people's interest, in particular NFTs.
Yeah, I just thought this topic was so interesting. We had a really good story on the Defiant this week by Brady Dale, and the story showed how Bored Apes is overtaking CryptoPunks in the market in terms of trading volume and also floor prices for the NFTs. And it's anyone guess what the market, why the market does the things it does, but some people say that it's because Bored Apes has a more flexible IP standard or license than CryptoPunks. So in the case of Bored Apes, owners are free to modify, use, commercialize their own apes in the way that they want. So the rights of individual NFT from the Bored Apes Yacht Club don't belong to Eurolabs, to the makers of Bored Apes. That's not the case with CryptoPunks. Owners of punks have the right to like hold, showcase, and sell their punks, but they can't, for example, make a show with their CryptoPunk. They can't even like put them on a T-shirt legally if they wanted to. Like they can't do other things other than show and sell.
Yeah, because they're owned by Lava Labs still, aren't they? Essentially,
that's right.
IP rights.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting, and there's this debate on whether, you know, what's best for NFT, considering, you know, we're in crypto and everything is kind of open source and community led. And so in this world, it just seems like a model like Bored Apes is more suited to kind of the ethos of the ecosystem. And then you have other projects that take things even further, like cryptodes and nouns, and those are they fall under Creative Commons license, which Bored Apes don't. And the difference there is that not just the owner of the NFT can do whatever they want with it, but anyone can do whatever they want with those NFTs, even if they don't own them. So like I can go and take a cryptode and make a Netflix show out of it and profit from it, and I don't have to give anyone any explanations.
Yeah, it's this function of composability, I think, really, is you're able to build on top. And I was in Vegas last week and interviewing Timbaland, you know, the famous producer, and they built Apes in Production. There's a group of them, including Joel and Benji Madden from Good Charlotte, and they're building an entire kind of animation, music, NFT thing on top of their Bored Apes. And we're seeing that quite a lot with, you know, we've seen the band, the zoo, whatever it is. There's a bunch of these coming up out of Bored Apes. And we can't see it in CryptoPunks. So really, if it's network effects that drives everything, the ability to have composability on top of an existing NFT allows for network effects, and CryptoPunks doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, Lava Labs is tied to UTA, and that covers autoglyphs and Meebits as well. Meebits is an interesting one because Meebits are very much designed to be used in the metaverse. Artifact is another just phenomenal.
What are Meebits?
Meebits are basically sort of voxel characters that Lava Labs created earlier on in the year, and they sucked the life out of the NFT market. But there were 20,000 of them. There's aliens and pigs and kind of weird skin and bones ones, but they have not really caught fire because people just don't quite know how to use them. But the commercial rights, I think you're allowed to commercialize them up to like $100,000 or something. Artifact, that's basically their whole thing. I've got a pair of Artifact shoes behind me actually, but they make sneakers, and now they've moved into avatars. They've also got a license, and these avatars are incredibly beautifully done and very, very detailed. But again, they can be commercialized by owners up to $1 million unless you have one specifically designed with Murakami traits. And Murakami is a designer from Japan, does wild, crazy stuff, and you cannot commercialize any of them that have Murakami elements in them, which is kind of weird. And from my point of view, where we're going next year with the Defiant, we're moving into virtual production. We're going to be using Unreal Engine. We're going to be using digital characters. We're going to be using a digital version of me as a metahuman. And these other characters will play parts. And it'll be almost like following a soap opera or, you know, a reality TV show where some, you know, like a Meebit will crash into the set and accidentally take over. And we want to explore how we can use these characters. But of course, obviously, we want to see how successful we can be with them. They might have their own Instagram account. They might start getting brand deals. We'll have to talk to Camila about that. Side hustle. But now we're kind of thinking, well, what does this mean? Well, you know, which characters would we pick in order to invest time and energy into? And it probably wouldn't be a Meebit, which is a shame because they are kind of unique and weird and interesting. So I don't know. It's the metaverse is sort of gearing up to be this weird commercial landscape that, I don't know. If you look at these commercial licenses, like the Bored Apes one, it's like barely a page. You know, a lawyer will just rip through that in 5 minutes flat and find all the holes in it, and then it probably isn't worth the paper it isn't written on. So I don't know where this one goes, but I know there's going to be some fights.
Did you see that Twitter thread also about OpenSea, people minting copy NFTs on OpenSea and selling them? And there's basically really hard to figure out, sorry, the dogs are going mad, to figure out who owns what in that situation, because there's another NFT on the blockchain. People think it's legit. There is an issue around IP, and it's not controllable yet, I think.
Yeah, there's an issue around the actual artwork itself that people are trying to solve, whether it's on IPFS or whether it's on Arweave. I know there's a team that's taking a bunch of art to a vault in the Arctic, in Svalbard, in Norway. They're going to etch it onto diamond-crusted something or other, holographic plates, and then bury it in the ice because, you know, how crypto is that?
Crazy.
But it will survive an atomic bomb, so that's good.
It's so interesting because, like, in traditional art, it's like pretty fairly established that, you know, you buy the art, but obviously the artist owns all the like IP of that art. Like, there's no question there. Like, okay, you know, I can buy some like Banksy, whatever. But it's like the Banksy Foundation or whoever, the one who controls the IP to that, and that makes sense, right? Like, you don't really question it. But the fact that, you know, these are NFTs and you're supposed to be kind of like actual owner of the token and the art is kind of what makes things different, and like people are perceiving it that way.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, it's interesting because it is changing the art world. I'm pretty close with Damien Hirst, guys who run Damien Hirst business. And, you know, it's been a game changer for him because anything trades, he makes money from. So it's, you know, because that's in the smart contract, that's really interesting. So you don't mind giving up the IP rights. But I don't think anybody knows what rights they're buying, what rights they're not buying, and what's really happening with it. The space is full of complexity that nobody realizes because it looks so simple, because it's a bunch of cartoon characters and JPEGs, and you think you own it, but as I think Robin's saying, you don't.
Well,
and then there's.
Sorry, I forgot to put my hand up. You put your hand up, you go first.
Okay, sorry about that. And it's not just happening in NFT land, you know, like this week there was also this controversy around Aave token holders voting to add a business license to the Aave protocol. So this is super interesting. And the first, I think, to do it out of major DeFi protocols was Uniswap, which added a business license that was good for, I think, 2 years on Uniswap v3. And that means that, you know, someone like SushiSwap can't come and fork the code the way that they did with the previous version of Uniswap. So now Aave holders voted to have the same thing with Aave. Or actually, it like the vote itself was interesting because the vote was going towards not having a business license, but then one big token holder came in at the last minute and swayed the vote. So, I mean, we've talked about kind of the issues of token governance before, so that was interesting.
Isn't that a move but back away from decentralization, essentially?
Yeah.
Because what you're saying, and this is not open source, and we want to go back to monopolies because we want to protect our IP. And I get it, right? Because you've generated a lot of money in your IP, but it kind of goes against what the space thinks. And I have a feeling that it'll do this over time. It will coalesce back around kind of certain protocols and entities that try and protect themselves.
Yeah, it may or it may not. At the end of the day, the development of the code is about developers, and developers notoriously will just go where they want to go, and they can leave at a moment's notice, particularly in these anonymous protocols, and they often do. And we've seen it with SushiSwap that there's been this kind of strange political battle at the leadership level of SushiSwap, and one of the key team members who was the glue holding it all together, which was Xerox Maki, he left. And suddenly the whole thing just fell apart. And this is one of the most progressive, innovative protocols out there. It just couldn't cope with the loss of that team member. So, yeah, I think the open source idea is great. Commercial imperatives are also great, and they drive a lot of things. And it'll play out in real time when we get to report on it and see what happens.
Here's a question for you guys. DeFi volumes have fallen significantly, I think. And, you know, it seems like there's been a lull in this. Any idea what that's all about? Why that? Is it just because people have moved to NFTs and that's where, because there's only a limited set of people still in the space. So it's not like it's, you know, yes, it's growing exponentially, but not that exponentially. How are you thinking about that?
So, yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with price. You know, DeFi is a very risky place at the moment. You know, we all know the space is just starting. You know, it's only been alive for a couple of years. So I think people are happy to go and take leverage and do these kind of crazy yield farms and collateral loans to like buy more crypto when prices are rising. But you know, in the past couple of weeks, that hasn't been the case. Obviously, I think the market's been really volatile, and it's been a bit scary to be out there in kind of the riskiest corner of DeFi and crypto. So I think it's a reaction from traders just stepping back, maybe putting their chips in like a safer place within crypto or even outside of crypto, as the market is so volatile and as they wait for things to stabilize. So I think, you know, this is because DeFi is so early. It's really risky. I think as the space evolves, you know, people will see how it's actually useful for times like this when things are volatile and risky, because you can use things like stablecoins and start earning interest on them, for example, instead of having to be in this like just like volatile currency or stock, or you know, it can be an alternative to a volatile and down market. But I think in kind of a more macro level, even if you do have those options, DeFi is seen as more risky, and in times of just like a sell-off, people will take their chips off.
It was really interesting. I had drinks last night with somebody who's moved to the Cayman Islands who runs a kind of market neutral multi-strat crypto fund. And a lot of what he does is DeFi. And I was talking to him about risks. You know, what are the known risks? What are the unknown risks? And we were thinking through that because having seen numerous ways that people get screwed from things like long-term capital when spreads blow out and you get this, you know, everybody ends up having to delever at the same time. So we were talking through this and some of these risks and how you can hedge them. And the risk that came up that kind of stops us both was not the risk of tether, which is one of the ones that gets raised. And I would say it's a known, right? It was what happens if the regulators unbank the US crypto industry, because that's what came up at this Real Vision event. Caitlin Long, Crypto Dad, and a few others were talking about they think there's a real chance that they'll repeat what they did to the gun industry and various other people a while ago, where they unbanked them for a while. So maybe the risk therefore is USDC. And I thought that was fascinating because that would be a nightmare, because in the US, I mean, I've just set up a crypto fund of hedge funds. There's basically only two banks you can use, Signature and Silvergate. And if people get unbanked, I mean, that's a mess.
But why would USDC be more at risk than USDT? Like if crypto were...
USDT is banked out of Bermuda. Sorry, out of the Bahamas. Bahamas or Bermuda? Bahamas. So
Bahamas. Delphic. Yeah.
So yeah, Delphic, and so they're one degree of separation from the US banking system because they operate in the Eurodollar market essentially. So it's if the regulators try to pull a stunt like this, let's say it's a 10% probability, but the 10% probability would be USDC trading 20% discount.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, this is really serious if this is the case. Also, all of these DeFi protocols then get into trouble. The whole fund industry gets into trouble as well. I don't know if they've got the stomach to do it. Robin, any thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, we were talking about the catalyst for DeFi volumes dropping off. I think there's a few things, just to go back to that played into this. Well, the altcoin market rallied significantly, and there was nothing really to do in that market last year. So DeFi took up the slack. I also think there was a lot of brand new shiny protocols that arrived last year, like Wi-Fi, like Curve, like Compound, and there was just something really juicy and exciting everywhere you looked. We haven't seen really anything compete with that this year. The only thing that's I can really think of on Ethereum is Olympus DAO. That's been a very, very big success story in our market, and a lot of capital is poured into it, but it's very niche. On other chains, there's been interesting things being built, but bringing that round, you talk about stablecoin risk. Elizabeth Warren was talking very heavily about stablecoin risk and zeroing in on stablecoins as deeply troubling, demanding regulation straight away. She's calling DeFi the most dangerous part of the crypto world. She's obviously never been on BitMEX. And she says this is where the regulation is effectively absent. And no surprise, it is where the scammers and the cheats and the swindlers mix among part-time investors and first-time crypto traders. That's you and me, Camila. I'm a swindler. You're a cheat. Wow. She wasn't mincing words there. And talking specifically about the risks of bank runs on stable coins. And of course, you know, bank runs, they happen. The ecosystem I've spent a lot of time looking at this year is Terra, UST. UST is an algorithmic stablecoin. It's entirely supported by arbitrage. If it goes too high, then you sell it. And if it goes too low, you buy it back. Very, very simple. It had a bank run earlier in the year, and the whole thing collapsed. It lost its peg. And they went back and looked at it and said, this cannot happen ever again. And they have put in place things to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And of course, it needs to be tested. But UST is organized and sort of, you can't say it's owned and operated. It's sort of just kind of managed by a Korean company. And the head of that Korean company was on CoinDesk this week talking to one of the journalists there. And she straight up asked him, like, are you in Asia because you're afraid of the US? And Do Kwon said, no, I'm in Asia because I'm Asian. Like, what are you talking about? I'm here because I'm actually, you know, a citizen of the world, building a product for the world. And like, why am I worried about you? So I think there is a degree to which, yes, unbanking US-based entities would be problematic and would be deeply difficult. But I look at a system like, you know, an ecosystem like Terra and UST, and I can see all the work they've done to create a sustainable and very well-protected system. And I think, well, a lot of smart money would just go there, if I'm perfectly honest, because there are great yields and there's a lot of good stuff being built.
I agree. I mean, clearly this just becomes banking arbitrage. You go to the country. I mean, Singapore will do well out of that and stuff like that. The issue is the pressure it does in the meantime as everyone sorts their shit out. Because a lot of people just can't bank elsewhere because, you know, like, as I said, with this, you know, crypto fund of funds, for US investors, we have to have a US bank account. So what do we do? You just throw everybody out, everybody gets frozen. It's kind of weird. I mean, again, I don't think it happens. And, you know, I'm lucky because we're Cayman Islands based and we've got different options, but it's just something people should be honest about, that there is a risk. Because if that's what Liz Warren is trying to do, then there'll be other people she's trying to convince.
Would this mean, for example, Coinbase would get, like, all of the US-based crypto exchanges wouldn't be able to get a bank account? Like, they wouldn't be able to have, like, fiat to crypto bridge?
I mean, and again, this is what I couldn't get my head around when I heard that panel. My natural skepticism is, how the hell are they going to do this without upsetting 30 million voters? So, you know, so I think the probability is relatively low because of that. I mean, what do they do with the exchanges?
I mean, the exchanges are the main gateway. If you have a Coinbase where you can put your USD and get crypto out, once you do that, then, you know, like, it's one step to DeFi. So I don't know, like, to me, like, that's the only way where you could really truly unbank crypto, was to take that bridge away, that fiat bridge, and that's through exchanges. So are they really going to, like, go to Coinbase, a publicly traded US company, and be like, no, we're taking away your like right to have a bank account? I don't know, that seems very unlikely
so then maybe what they try, again, if they would try it, it becomes more focused on the things that they don't want. So let's say DeFi, because or stable coins. So they just say, look, we're not going to give you a license. And I think Robin's point is absolutely correct. I mean, I've also been looking at the Terra's offering, and it's very interesting, and people realize that that is an answer.
I think stablecoins are more at risk, than crypto exchanges, because they can say you can't have a license, you can't back these cryptos with USD, and then you get like all the fiat-backed cryptos with accounts in the US get wrecked, basically. But that will just it'll make the space more censorship resistant by need. Like they'll just have to go there, and we'll kind of get more of these algorithmic stablecoins. I think, like, to me, there's like you can try to stop crypto, and a huge country, economic power like the US can do damage to it, but I don't think they can really stop it. Like, they can put limits, but then people will go and like you say, go to a jurisdiction that's friendly, or seek like technological answers to that, like algorithmic stablecoins. But it'll keep going.
There's always the great irony of these things, that the government moves to act in the interest of protecting investors, and in so doing do so much damage to the investors that they are beyond wrecked and will never come back. It's a lovely thing that they do. There is another story here, which is Myanmar's shadow government declaring the USDT an official currency. I mean, they could have picked a better one, couldn't they, Camila?
I mean, USDT, it had so many issues that I can see where they're
I think
going
Myanmar's got
that.
more issues than USDT. I think of all the risks that they've got, that's probably not the biggest.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, actually. You were talking about volumes in DeFi dying. What hasn't died in DeFi is the number of users coming into the space, but also the development. And I've spent a lot of time looking. We have a series called First Look, and in that I dig into the weird, wild stuff that's been built out on the fridges. Man, there's so much good problem solving going on. These little teams that land on a little specific niche problem that needs to be solved, like how to front run a pricing bot on Terra so that loans don't get liquidated, so they automatically settle a position, and so you don't get cascading liquidations. Such a simple thing, but someone just said, that's a problem, I'm going to solve it. And I think that's one of the amazing things about this space. There's just so many little fixes, like downside protection and basis neutral things, and smaller, less kind of exotic financial engineering, but it's really solving problems.
Well, this is the amazing thing in the space, is people who aren't in the space can't get their heads around how many people are trying to solve so many problems in this distributed network globally. It's astonishing. It's that robustness you kind of referred to, Cami, is it's almost impossible to stop because of this. Everyone is just, it's like an ant colony. Everybody's just out there fixing all the different issues and moving it forwards. It's always astonishing. And you focus on one bit and you turn around and there's suddenly NFTs, something's happening over there that you've never seen or heard of before. And then you look at it and there's another layer 2 or a layer 1 or something that's really interesting. It's always mind-blowing. It's impossible to keep on top of as well. I don't know how you do it, Robin. How do you keep on top of all of these little quirky projects then?
I have a clone. His name's Brian.
Brian.
No, I can't. And I tell you what's really difficult now is that, previously on other chains, there was kind of maybe one or two things of note. Now you're just seeing an explosion on Avalanche, on Solana, on Cosmos, like each of these chains, also on Kusama. Wow, this is so much really rich, interesting work being done. I don't know what happens when everything crunches down and we go through a bear cycle, but I'm also not worried about it anymore, because a lot of the ideas are being propagated through different chains. So you see an idea in one place, it's going to get forked somewhere else, because that's just what happens. So as long as you understand what's happening on Ethereum, you can be pretty sure something similar will happen elsewhere. It's not always the case, but most of the time, ideas tend to travel very quickly. But I mean, I guess it leads us to a question about what we think is going to happen next year. So I'm curious, Cami, what your thoughts are for 2022.
Um, so I think like I'm looking at a couple of themes. Um, I'm looking at DAOs as like a big driver of the narrative next year. We've already starting to see that pick up at the end of this year. You know, I think Constitution DAO was something that, you know, just like really sparked people's imagination. Uh, it failed, but in the end, like it was just such an interesting experiment. And, you know, the idea that let's dream big, organize money, organize people to buy like a rare copy of the Constitution. And we're able to raise a big chunk of change, like over $40 million in just like 3 days or so. And so you see all these other projects and groups kind of organizing around big ideas and crazy ideas like that. Like let's buy SeaWorld, let's buy Blimp DAO is wanting to buy one of the few remaining blimps in the world. So I don't know, there's just like crazy
Blimp
ideas.
DAO, that's brilliant.
Yes, Blimp DAO, that's the latest DAO. Look at the balloon emojis on Twitter. And these are kind of like, you know, crazy, a bit like ideas that don't like will do much, but I'm looking forward to big ideas that will bring kind of like a positive impact. And I think we'll see more of those next year. I think people are starting to realize how powerful organizing people and the money can be, like on a global scale. So I think that's one thing.
DAOs are probably going to come into politics as well. We're seeing
Exactly.
that moving. People are moving that way.
Yeah. We saw that with the infrastructure bill, like how quickly crypto organized, and there's like PAC DAO and a bunch of like political lobbying DAOs forming. So absolutely. So I think that's going to be a really interesting theme next year. I have no idea whether where the market will be, but I'm really interested to see where DAOs go.
What about you, Raoul? What are you seeing for next year? I was just going through your tweet thread where you were talking about people being scarred by past cycles, but then being kind of optimistic we haven't seen a blow off top yet.
Yeah, so you know, if I look at the structure of the market, it started diverging from the previous patterns of 2017 and Bitcoin 2013, which was interesting because they were kind of completely mirroring it, and then it started changing. And it's something that I've been suspecting was going to happen because the participants in the space have changed. And everybody in it from the past, when it was purely retail, haven't got their heads around this. So what happens at the end of the year is, firstly, there's the tax stuff that we know, and that's probably usually been the tipping point for crypto after it's had the huge run at the end of the year. But significantly, institutions tend to rebalance portfolios. So they will rebalance to go back to their weighting. Let's say their weighting was 1% or 2%. They will sell down on their position. So that tends to drag into year end. Hedge funds, because they want to get paid, want to close their books, because then that's where their P&L is marked and then they get paid on their performance fees. So there's a lot of incentivization to actually take profits. Now, that's not profits of people who want to be out of the crypto market. It's just driven by investor metrics. So when you come into January, I used to see this in the hedge fund industry. I write about it every year in Global Macro Investor. There's a phenomenon that happens every January is everybody comes in with a brand new P&L. And they're like, well, what can I do today? Now, we've got a ton of crypto hedge funds, traditional hedge funds in crypto. So those guys are going to come to their desk. They've squared their book. What are they going to do? They're going to buy crypto. So, and the institutions, I mean, I know this because I've had first-hand conversations with so many, is, you know, they spent the whole year getting the approvals, getting the custody, getting their accounts onboarded with whoever it is. And then the next step is, well, our mandates for 2022. So I see a huge amount of mandate from institutions actively putting money into the market. So my guess is there's a lot of people who think that maybe the cycle's topped, maybe it's done. I think it's a temporary phenomenon. It probably absolutely rips, and it may rip from kind of next week when most of the institutional guys have gone home. And we see that often in financial markets, because then what happens is it's very thin liquidity and there's a bit of a panic. to get into the positions, and that usually goes through. So I think next year is probably stronger in the first half of the year than anybody imagines, because everyone thinks it should have finished now at the end of the year, because that's previous cycles. And I think that, and I've talked about this before, I think the ETH 2.0 is going to be the big driver of the market this time. And I'm sure it's going to be buy the rumor, sell the fact. Now, I know that people who are locked or staked for ETH2, there's a period of time where they can't sell. But that's like red rag to a bull to every hedge fund or every trader, because I know you're going to have to sell. So I'm just going to force you to sell at the lowest possible price, because there's a lot of sellers. So I have a feeling that it's going to be a buy the rumor, sell the facts. So the moment it's announced, everyone's like, oh, ETH, it's amazing now. It's going to be a deflationary asset and blah, blah, blah. And the market's going to puke because everyone realizes there's a bunch of people who are locked into the position and can't do anything about it. So that's my mental framework. Could be completely wrong. I think it's stronger first half of the year than anybody imagines. And the structure of these markets change. And then I think it probably suffers a bit, and that would also suffer with probably withdrawal of liquidity from the Fed and others as well. So then you get the double negative withdrawal of liquidity from markets and this change of structure because of the ETH2, which I think will be a larger driver of the cycle than the Bitcoin halving was.
Yeah, we've always worked on the thesis that more sophisticated crypto capital would fly to stables and then start playing in DeFi, but we now have this kind of negative headwind around stablecoins. I'm actually really excited about the open metaverse, about where we're going to get this amazing vortex that I believe DeFi is the kind of heart of. It's the financial engine that drives all this development around, building in NFTs and games developers, plus identity and who we are, and working from home, all these kind of things. That is very cultural, very relevant, and inevitably is going to be in the news every other week, thanks to Mr. Zuckerberg. So it gives us a point of entry to talk about what we need to talk about, and it gives us a pantomime villain to act against, because we've been missing one. I miss Jihan Wu. Where is Jihan? Where is he? Where's Craig Wright? We just haven't had them. I think that's probably what we've been missing. Maybe I should nominate Raoul Pal as next year's pantomime villain. I also think
particularly good villain. I'm not very good at that, but
I also believe that we're going to see a PFP from an NFT project make a run for president. I believe we will see that. They won't go. They won't go anywhere, but I think it's going to happen.
That's like the monster raving loony party in the UK, if you remember, Screaming Lord Such.
Screaming Lord Such. Yeah. Now that's a reference that I haven't heard in a long time. And what a beautifully weird and bonkers note to end on. Raoul Pal, Camila Russo, thank you so much for joining me for this end of year special. We ran long, but I think it was worth it. We'll be coming back to you on your screens in the new year. It'll be 2022. And if Raoul is right and we are ripping, well, good God help us all. Until then, I will see you on the next one. I've been Robin Schmidt. It's been a wonderful year. Have a great Christmas and a new year. We'll see you on the next one.